On today's show, I'll give you my prediction for when Pete Alonso will become the New York Mets all-time home run king.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find any of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Now, the big news right now surrounding the New York Mets is all tied towards Kodai Senga and his hamstring injury. If you are looking for my coverage of that injury, I did a full live stream after the game yesterday where I broke down what happened, my gut reaction to it, what it means for the Mets in the short term, what it means for the Mets in the long term. So if you're looking for some Kodai Senga commentary, that's where you can find it. And I will also touch on the newest details, which we don't really have much in the final segment of the show today. Really, the only big new thing was that Kodai Senga told Pete Alonso that it wasn't his fault for making that bad throw. He said he felt a pull in his hamstring before he made the leap. Whether that was to make Pete feel better or not, doesn't really matter. The injury is the injury. And again, we'll talk about some of the actual details on what's next in the final segment. But I've been teasing this topic that we're going to go through today for a few days now on the show, which is looking at Pete Alonso and his path to being the Mets' all-time home run leader. He's about to break the record. He is now 10 away from breaking Darryl Strawberry's record, 9 away from tying him. And I want to try to pinpoint when it's going to happen. So if you look at where Pete's at, again, sitting at 243 career home runs, the Mets franchise record has held for a long time now. Darryl Strawberry with 252. We all expected David Wright to pass that record, but unfortunately, injury shortened his career, and so he ended up with only 242 instead of getting to that 252 number. And Pete obviously just passed David Wright a couple of days ago. So far this year, Pete Alonso has 17 home runs in 69 games played, which is super nice. He is homering once every 4 games played. So if you break that down, there's 16 games left in June, 12 games left before the All-Star break. That's 28 games to be played before we get to the All-Star break. And he's sitting at 243 home runs. So you do the math. If he stays on his current pace, Pete Alonso could be going into the break on his 250th home run, which is going to be a really special one. Obviously, that 253 is going to be the most special when he gets that record to himself. But 250, if you throw any franchise records aside, that's halfway to 500. And if Pete Alonso has a path to the Hall of Fame, and I don't know if he really does, but if he did, that would be the only pathway, is getting to 500 home runs. And just as a sort of pie in the sky goal to get to, 500 is possible for Pete Alonso. I don't know if I call it likely, but it is possible. Getting halfway there is going to be a big moment for him. I think more likely he'll end up somewhere in the 400s, but regardless, it's a huge achievement to even be around these numbers at this stage of his career. This is his 7th season, and one of his seasons was shortened because of COVID. You know, if Pete Alonso had played a full 2020 season, he probably already has the record. He might have gotten the record before he hit free agency, which is wild. But here he is, right on the cusp of it. How many home runs can he hit before the All-Star break, realistically? Like, beyond just the pace. The pace tells us 7. But what's Pete Alonso at his best? Like, what is his home run pace when he's rolling? Well, you look at his last 11 games played, he has 6 home runs. So theoretically, if he does that in the next 11 games and does it again after that, he will break the record before the All-Star break. So anything really is possible. If you look at his career, one thing you could do is look at his home runs per month to just get a sense of how many home runs he typically can hit when he's at his best across a month span, because right now we are pretty much a month away from the All-Star break. So if you look at it from that perspective, last year Pete Alonso hit 8 home runs in a month twice, did not have his best home run hitting season. 2023, when he hit 46 bombs, Pete had 2 months where he had 10 home runs. They were actually the first 2 months of the season. Amazing as bad as the Mets were in 2023, Pete Alonso was at 20 home runs before the calendar flipped to June, which is pretty wild. I did not remember him getting off to such a great start, but he did. And then he had a 9 home run month in August. 2023, he had 3 months where he hit 9 home runs. I would say that was the most consistent season of Pete Alonso's career all around as a hitter. 2021, he had 1 month where he hit 10 home runs. 2019, he had 2 months where he hit 9, 1 month where he hit 10, and his career high for home runs in a month was September of 2019. What is significant about that? That's when he was running down Aaron Judge for the rookie home run record, and he got it in the second to last game of the season. He homered 3 times in the Mets' final 5 games, 6 times in their last 12 games to get that record. So if you're looking at his past history, the most home runs he's ever hit in a month is 11, only happened 1 time in a juiced ball season, but it was also in search of a record. So with the record coming, you never know if Pete Alonso might not just turn on the Jets here and all of a sudden he has a bunch of home runs over the next 10 games and this conversation gets sped up. You really don't know. Again, 6 home runs in his last 11 games played. Now there's 16 games left in June. So again, if he maintains that season-long pace, that would put him at 10 home runs this month because he did 4 more home runs. But if he ends up doing a little bit more than that, maybe he hits 7 more home runs to close out this month, really ends it on a heater, which would be a career high with 13 home runs in a month. All of a sudden, Pete Alonso is right there. Pete Alonso could be at 250 by the end of this month. And then we're really talking. But let's just take it from the conservative angle, okay? And let's just say he's sitting at 250 by the end of the first half, going into the All-Star break. When is he going to do it then? Well, luckily the Mets have a homestand to start the second half. They play 6 games at home, a series against the Reds, and a series against the Angels. Now, the Red Series, which will take place starting on July 18th through the 20th, that's David Wright weekend. David Wright will get his jersey retired on the 19th. So that is an interesting series to look at for when Pete Alonso might just break this record. The crowds are going to be wild, but it doesn't feel right to me. My prediction has to be on something that feels right. The timing has to make sense. And I'm not going to predict that Pete Alonso is going to do this thing on the road. So when I was trying to come up with my prediction, I'm looking at the homestands. And the Mets do not finish the first half at home. They finish it on the road. They're going to play the, who is it? The Royals and somebody else. I know the Royals is the last series. What's the second to last series? Orioles and Royals to close out the first half. And it's going to be tough to hit home runs at Kauffman. So if you're going to look at the earliest that I would possibly even consider predicting that Pete Alonso would break the record, a series I thought about, if everything goes right, 4th of July weekend. 4th of July is a Friday. It is the second Subway Series of the season, Mets-Yankees at Citi Field. That would be a fun series to do it in. It really would be. But to get there, we're talking about in 22 games, Pete Alonso having to hit 10 home runs. That is asking a lot. I don't think he gets there by the end of that series. I could see him maybe getting to 250 and being 2 away and then maybe going cold on the road and not quite getting there. Ultimately, my prediction for what happens here with Pete Alonso, the way I see it all laying out, I think he'll go into the break at 251. I think he's going to go into the break 1 home run away from tying the record. I think he's going to come out of the break, first game, David Wright weekend, but not the day that David Wright's jersey is retired. Pete Alonso is going to hit a home run. So that'll put him at 252, tied with Darryl Strawberry. Then I think he doesn't homer for the rest of that series against the Reds. And I got circled on my calendar, my prediction, Monday, July 21st, 7/21/25, Pete Alonso etches his name into the record books with his 253rd home run. That's when I think he does it. against the Angels, because if he doesn't do it against the Angels, the Mets are going to hit the road to face the Giants and the Padres. And I don't know if Pete Alonso gets to August without breaking the record. So that homestand, the first one out of the break, I think that's where Pete Alonso watch is going to be at an all-time high. And having that coincide with the David Wright weekend, that's going to be a very exciting time for Mets fans. So we'll see what happens. Another question, though, will Pete Alonso start his first All-Star game this year? He's played in All-Star games, but he's never started. I want to talk about that next. Whether you're gearing up for back-to-back meetings or you're shuttling the kids back and forth to activities or tackling that endless to-do list, your morning sets the tone for the rest of your day. That's why it should start with the perfect cup of coffee crafted just for you. Enter Trade. Trade is the #1 coffee destination in the U.S., delivering fresh, incredible coffee from over 50 of the country's top roasters. Whether you're a cold brew fan or a pour-over purist, they've got a roast you'll love. Before you get started, you go online. I took Trade's quiz. It only took a minute. They just ask how you prepare your coffee at home, what's your go-to roast level, what flavors do you like, and then they're going to send you your first bag. For me, my first bag was spot on. The coffee was fresh. It smelled awesome. And honestly, it ruined grocery store coffee for me. If the first match isn't perfect for you, they're going to replace it for free as well. So they're going to get it just right. Right now, Trade is exclusively offering our listeners 50% off your 1-month trial at drinktrade.com/LockedOnMLB. That's trade, TRADE.com/LockedOnMLB for 50% off your 1-month trial. Again, that's drinktrade.com/LockedOnMLB. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button to help us get closer to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Now, Pete Alonso has been the most frequent All-Star for the Mets over the last couple of years. Since his debut in 2019, he has been an All-Star 4 out of 6 times, and the 2 exceptions were 2020 when there was no All-Star game and 2021 where he just missed it. Last 3 years, he has made it each year. He was joined by Jeff McNeil, Starling Marte, and Edwin Diaz in 2022. Him and McNeil were also together in 2019. 2023, it was just Pete and Senga, and then last year, it was only Pete Alonso. But despite all those All-Star appearances, he has never started an All-Star game. And it had me wondering, when's the last time the Mets did have an All-Star game starter? You have to go back to 2016. I'll let you think at home. Who do you think it was? Yoenis Cespedes was the last Met to start an All-Star game. Before that, you have to go to 2013 when the Mets hosted the game for the last time they had starters, David Wright and Matt Harvey, who took the ball as the starting pitcher. Before that, you got 2011, Jose Reyes and Carlos Beltran each started. 2010, David Wright started. 2009, David Wright and Carlos Beltran both started. 2007, it was those 2 guys again. And then 2006, you had David Wright, you had Carlos Beltran, you also had Paul LaDuca. All of them were starters. Reyes was also a starter in 2007 along with Wright and Beltran. But the Mets have not really fared well in fan voting since those teams of my childhood when I was, I was right in my prime as a Mets fan, really falling in love with the team. That's when I was probably 10 through 13, around those ages, when David Wright and Jose Reyes were at their absolute peak, and Carlos Beltran was a star in those teams. Should have done a lot more than they ultimately did in the late 2000s, but there was a lot of good players, and they got a lot of recognition in the voting. Mets fans have not showed up for voting lately, and hopefully this year is a little bit of a change in that regard. We typically see if a team is the best in their league, they're going to be well represented in the All-Star game because you have the fan vote, and if your team is buzzing and doing great, your fans are usually pretty engaged. But also, it's not just about the fans. The fans are going to pick the starters, but pitchers are going to be selected by the managers, and the reserves are selected by the managers and the players. So it's going to be very interesting to see how many All-Stars the Mets get, something that we're going to continue to sort of discuss piece by piece over the coming weeks until we get to the break. But when it comes to who might start specifically, again, the Mets have not had a starter in almost a decade, and they have a really good shot this year with a couple of their players. Juan Soto, just because of the star factor. And if you are even looking right now at the top outfielders in the National League, if you go by OPS, you got Corbin Carroll, James Wood, Kyle Tucker, and Pete Crow Armstrong, who are the leaders in the clubhouse. Soto, I believe, is fifth. You have Fernando Tatis Jr., if you look at WAR, who's right there with those other four guys. But Juan Soto is not too far off from the pack when it comes to the top outfielders. He has some time to boost his stats, and he might just get a lot of votes from fans. Soto has only started one All-Star game in his career. It was last year with the Yankees. So he never quite got the voting love until he was in pinstripes. Maybe Mets fans show up for him in the same way. You then have Francisco Lindor, who absolutely should be the starter for the National League. I hope he finally gets that recognition to at least be an all-star, but really he should start, coming off a runner-up MVP finish last year, but not even being an all-star. And now he's leading on all NL shortstops and OPS home runs. He's third in RBIs. He's third in stolen bases, and he leads in WAR. He should be the starter. But Pete Alonso has a very good case as well. He just has a really good player as competition, and that is Freddie Freeman. This is going to be a race, and it better come down to Freeman and Alonso, the fan voting, and I'll be really curious to see who wins out, West Coast versus East Coast, and the numbers could not be any closer right now. If you look at weighted runs created plus, which is a stat that measures hitters on a league average of 100, it's park adjusted, so that accounts for where you're playing, and it really is the best statistic that'll tell us an all-encompassing offensive value for a player. Pete's at 177, or is at 177 going into the game today. Freddie Freeman at 175. So they're right there with each other. And if you look at FanGraphs WAR, they're both sitting with an identical mark of 2.7 wins above replacement. So it really is a dead heat right now. If you look at some of the other stats, Freddie's got Pete in batting average sitting 347. He's got a 417 on base, also has the edge on Pete there. He's pretty close in slug just because of that big difference in batting average, hitting 50 points better than Pete. He's got a 579 slug. Alonso has a 585 slug. He's hit more home runs. He's got 17 home runs to Freddie Freeman's 9. They both have 21 doubles. Pete's played 11 more games, so he's been able to rack up a little more counting stats. He's got 63 RBIs to Freddie Freeman's 41. Freddie is playing through a bad ankle. He got surgery in the offseason after that ankle that he miraculously played throughout the playoffs and put up remarkable performances despite the injury. He re-injured it in the shower this year, apparently, and so it's still been an issue, that same ankle. And then he just recently pulled a quad. Doesn't seem like a serious injury. He's going to play through it because this is a guy where if he was just walking base to base, you'd probably still want him in the lineup. That's how good of a hitter he is. Like if you had to just say, you know what, Freddie, just walk. It's okay. And you're going to play around the bag. You can just basically stand on first base like it's Little League at all times, and you don't have to move around too much. But, we still want you batting third in the lineup because that's how good you are. I've talked about it this year. Freddie Freeman, in my opinion, is the best hitter in baseball. I know that is crazy because you have Aaron Judge, because you have Shohei Ohtani. I'd say the best left-handed hitter in baseball. Judge is on a different planet, and so is Ohtani. But Freddie Freeman is the guy that I would fear the most in a single at-bat. Now, if you look at the player poll, that's actually Juan Soto, funny enough. The players just recently had an anonymous poll where Soto was voted as the guy that you would not want to face with the game on the line more than anyone else. So take that for what it's worth. But when you look at this all-star race, again, it's very close, and it really could come down to who finishes this thing stronger. So we'll see if Pete Alonso can remain on this June heater that he's been on. If he has a June similar to his April, I think he's going to be a starter for the National League. And it would be a really nice testament to where the Mets are at as a franchise right now and where they've been across the Steve Cohen era. If they finally get an all-star starter and it's not just one, they actually get two, and both Lindor and Alonso start this all-star game, I think that would be a really good thing for this franchise, just to see those guys getting that national recognition. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. It's a fan vote. Who cares? I mean, for all we know, it's just going to be a popularity contest, and the Mets aren't going to have anyone voted in by the fans because that's been the case the last couple of years. They've had to get guys in based on the reserve process. But I would really love to see it. And I would say, obviously, I have all the bias in the world. But if you're just looking at personal narratives and things of that nature, I think Pete deserves the starting nod over Freddie. Freddie's having a good season, having a great season. He's had a lot of great seasons. And that doesn't mean you should completely knock a player. But Pete Alonso's having a career year. And he's doing it on what so far has been the best team in baseball up to this point. I think Pete deserves that nod, and I hope he gets it. Although if I had to pick one, I still want to see Lindor get on the All-Star team and start because he has just been robbed the last couple of years. He should have been an All-Star last season. He should have been an All-Star in 2023. He should have been an All-Star in 22. And year after year after year, he hasn't gotten there. I will say 2022, there was at least a justifiable case for him not making All-Star because Dansby Swanson and Trey Turner each had really good years. 2023, Geraldo Perdomo making over Lindor still drives me nuts. And then last year, CJ Abrams got it over Lindor, and I didn't like that either. I thought the Nationals had enough pitchers that they could have stuck a Nationals pitcher in the bullpen somewhere if it was Kyle Finnegan or whoever it was going to be. They could have found somebody to stick on the All-Star team from the Nationals that wasn't Abrams. Instead, they chose Abrams, and they squeezed Lindor, which was absolutely ridiculous. But that's where we're at with the All-Star stuff right now. To close out the show, we're going to look at the upcoming series, Mets versus Rays, and I will give you your little Kodai Senga update. We'll get to all of that in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA Finals are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and to win big. And it's not just your NBA action. You got your MLB action as well. Maybe you think that Pete Alonso is going to go yard tonight. You could take Pete Alonso with the home run prop along with the Mets winning in a same-game parlay, and you can win big. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. You head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you're an everydayer that's always tuning into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the match. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. You get the lineup graphics sent to your phone each day, so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, like I said, I really talked about Kodai Senga from all angles on that live stream after the game. So I don't want to get into too much depth on this, but I did have a thread that I put up on Twitter that I think is worth repeating here. And it's sort of a cliff notes of everything I talked about on the show, but I gave 5 reasons for why I am optimistic despite this injury to Senga. The first one is that this injury took place 6 weeks earlier in the season compared to when he went down last year. And to me, that is the necessary time frame that should ensure that even if this is worst case scenario hamstring strain, hopefully it's not, there should be enough time with about 4 months for Senga, or at least 3.5 months until the end of the season, for Senga to get back and to be fully 100% come October. And that's all I care about. Of course, it sucks. It would have been great if Senga was healthy all year, and he could have been a Cy Young candidate, honestly. But even if this is months, not weeks, the Mets have time on their hands this time compared to last time, where it happened right before the deadline and you're already pushing up against the end of the season by the time he got back. And he was basically doing rehab starts in the playoffs, and that's not a situation you want to be in. Number 2 reason for optimism, Senga nearly has 75 innings under his belt this year, so there won't be as much rust as last year where he really hadn't pitched since spring training, and now he's in a playoff game. He had the one start against the Braves, looked amazing, and that was when he had fully gotten himself right. So now he'll get the opportunity to get himself completely right again. Plus, he's got some innings under his belt this year, so that rush should not be as tough to get through whenever he does return. The number 3 reason why I'm optimistic, the Mets have the depth to overcome this. They got Frankie Montas, who could be back in time for Senga's next turn in the rotation. They also got Paul Blackburn, who could slide into the rotation right now. So you have your options there for you. Montas is expected to start tonight, I believe, in Syracuse. That goes well. He could be good to go. Carlos Mendoza said they were still unsure whether he would need 1 or 2 more rehab starts before he'd be ready to return. They will make that decision independent of what just happened with Senga. And that's why I think the Mets will stay away from Paul Blackburn this weekend, just in case they needed to make a start on Wednesday. If they do, then all right, it's Blackburn. If Montas looks good on Friday and they're pretty much all set for him to start on Wednesday, then over the weekend, if they need Blackburn, they could still use him. But they will have an extra man in the bullpen, which is my 4th reason for optimism, or a silver lining to this. Max Kranick was not eligible to come back until I believe it was June 18th. And now he gets to come back early because he can replace an injured player on the roster. It's already been announced. Senga is going on the IL, and Kranick is coming up. That means your bullpen this weekend should have 8 guys in it, regardless of if Paul Blackburn is available or not. The final reason why I'm not too concerned about this, the Mets lineup is really starting to roll. You're seeing that top 5 with Lindor, Nimmo, Soto, Alonso, McNeil really start to gel. And I think the Mets can win in different ways. I still think the rotation is going to be good, but if it comes back to earth a little bit, because part of what has them as the best rotation in baseball is they had an ace who was pitching to a 1.47 ERA. Sure, they might fall back a little bit, but I think the offense can meet the difference. And now you're already looking at offensive statistics. The Mets are top 10 in everything this year. They have a top 10 offense. It hasn't felt like it, but because of what they've done in June, they have one of the best offenses in baseball. And so I think that can carry them if the pitching falls back a little bit. So that's basically the latest update with Kodai Senga, though. It's a situation where he's going to be out, and it's not going to be he's back in 2 weeks. I doubt it. You got to make sure he's 100%, and they're going to take their time because Kodai Senga is the sports car that I was talking about in the live stream. He is a high-maintenance vehicle. Sometimes you have everything checked out. The car's been in the shop for the while. You put it out on the road, and it looks beautiful, and it drives better than anything, and you love it. But then something happens, and it's going to be back in the shop for a while. That's where we're at with Kodai Senga, but we don't know how long the IL stint will be. We don't know how severe the hamstring strain is. He's going to get an MRI on Friday. Hopefully we'll learn something before the game, if not on Saturday, and then they can give us a general idea of how bad this is going to be. I'd imagine, though, the earliest that we see Kodai Senga is, I would say, at the end of July, if everything is like perfect. Or maybe the earliest that we'd see Senga, if it was the same level of a hamstring strain as Mark Vientos just had, I'll check that and say after the All-Star break. Like, that's probably the earliest. But, I mean, there's every chance we don't see Senga until September. That's fine, though. It really is. As long as he gets himself fully stretched out by the time you get to the end of the season, I think the Mets will be okay. Now, getting to this series over the weekend, Rays versus Mets. Rays 36-32 on the year, so 4 games over 500. They're 6.5 games back of the Yankees in the AL East. They are tied with the Minnesota Twins as the final 2 wildcard teams right now. They have an identical record. So they are sitting in playoff position. They've been 23-20 at home, 13-12 on the road. So slightly above average, slightly above 500 in each spot. They've won 6 of the last 10 games. They have a 21-14 record this year against teams who are over 500. So sometimes they do play up to their competition. They just lost a series at Fenway Park. Before that, they had beaten the Marlins. And before that, they had swept the Rangers. So overall, playing some pretty good baseball. You look at their last 30 days, the Mets and the Rays are separated by just 1 home run. I believe the Mets had a slight edge, but they've been pretty much hitting home runs at a similar clip. The Rays over the last 30 days had the 2nd most runs scored in Major League Baseball. They're 10th in OPS. You look at the season, a little more middle of the pack, 15th in home runs. 15th in home runs, 12th in runs scored, 17th in OPS. I wrote home runs twice, but I'm pretty positive as I'm remembering back. It was 15th in home runs, 12th in runs scored, 17th in OPS. The Mets are now in the top 7 in all 3 of those categories across the entirety of the season, and they're the top home run hitting team in June. They've scored the second most runs to only the Red Sox, and they're second best when it comes to team OPS. So it could be a couple of slugfests, but at the same time, these are also teams that are pretty good at pitching. The Rays are top 10 in ERA as a team, 14th in starter ERA, 4th in bullpen ERA. On the game the other day, they were talking about how the Rays are pitching a little bit differently this year. They're getting length out of their rotation in a way that they haven't in the past. And it sort of made it seem like this is a team carried by the starters. But you look at the bullpen ERA, it's still a team that can win the close games. I think that's why they are above 500. It is playing well when the games get tight. So these are two teams that can mirror each other a little bit in their strengths. And you're going to see some former Mets as well. Eric Orsi, a trade that, or Eric Ors, I believe is how you pronounce it. That's a trade that the Mets would like to have back. They traded him for Tyler Zuber last year. Tyler Zuber has yet to make an appearance for the Mets. He's been struggling mightily in AAA. And here's Ors with a 1.37 ERA in the season. So that is definitely a mistake trade, I would say. But, it is what it is. You're going to miss on those sometimes. Jake Mangum, who was, I think, put on waivers. How did he leave the Mets? Or he was traded to the Marlins. Been passed around a little bit. Now he's with the Rays. He's got a 304 batting average on the season. Jake Mangum had played all 4 years at, where was it? Was it Ole Miss? I mean, he was like a college legend. I mean, that was the whole thing. Mississippi State baseball. And then, he got drafted by the Mets in the, it was 4th round pick in 2019. And had some good numbers throughout his minor league career. He was traded as the player to be named later in the deal that sent Eleazar Hernandez and Jeff Brigham to the Mets before the 2023 season. I remember that now. And then he was traded to the Rays after the 2023 season and spent 2024 mostly in the minor leagues. And then he made his debut this year at the end of March, and it's been very solid for them. So we'll see a couple of familiar faces there. When it comes to the matchups on the pitching side of things, Clay Holmes versus Taj Bradley. Bradley has a 4.58 ERA this season. Holmes 2.95. Second game of the series, Drew Rasmussen versus Tyler McGill. Rasmussen's been unbelievable this year, 2.22 ERA. He's got a 0.90 whip, so he has been lights out. McGill's been solid this year with a 3.76 ERA. Then the final game of the series, Shane Baz versus Griffin Canning. Baz has a 4.97 ERA, Canning 3.22. Mets have as rested of a bullpen as they've had in a long time. Obviously, David Peterson helped them a bunch with the complete game shutout. And then, of course, on Monday, they have the off day. So Jose Budo, for example, I don't believe he's pitched this week. Not sure how frequently Max Kranick has been pitching in Syracuse, but again, he'll be back in the fold. Huascar Brazoban did just get 5 outs, so he might not be available. But other than that, I think the Mets will have a pretty wide open, pretty available, I should say, bullpen for the first game of this series. And we'll just see how things go. The Mets have been playing great baseball at home, so you got to feel pretty confident with whoever they're going against, although I will say the Rays present a much tougher challenge than some of the recent teams that have come to Citi Field. If you're looking at the Nationals, the White Sox, the Rockies, this is a little bit of a better ball club, but that could bring some pretty exciting games. So looking forward to covering it all this weekend. The Phillies got the Blue Jays at home this weekend. Then they're going to face the Marlins on the road next week while the Mets are playing the Braves on the road before those two teams are going to square off next weekend. The Mets are holding on to a 5.5 game lead in this division. So if they can finish off the homestand strong, take care of business, and win a series against the Braves, they should be sitting in a very comfortable spot regardless of what the Phillies do when those two teams go head-to-head. So there is a lot to look forward to here coming up. I'll be having shows every single day as always, so you will always stay informed on everything going on with the big league club, as well as keeping our eye towards the minor leagues. Haven't been able to do much prospect stuff so far this week. Maybe that's going to change over the weekend. There's definitely been some pretty good performances recently in the Mets minor leagues. Jet Williams is on a heater. Jonah Tong had another good start. So a lot to discuss there. Hopefully I'll be able to get to that on tomorrow's show. As always, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you want to be a Locked On Mets Insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything. The world of sports talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local host from each team, league-wide host from each league. By Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.